On today's show, the Capitals take game one with an overtime goal by Alex Ovechkin.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals as they take game number 1 over the Habs. And this is a big thing. The first 2 games being played at Cap One, that it is of paramount importance for the Capitals to try to take games number 1 and 2, because then the series heads out to the Bell Center, where it is going to be that much more difficult for the Caps. I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about what needs to get worked on for the Capitals to win again in game number 2. Now, listen, the Capitals did take game number 1, but there were some things that need to get worked on. What are those things that will help them be more successful in game number 2? I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about who stepped up. We know it was Alex Ovechkin, but what other players put the Capitals into victory lane? But just to get it going here, talking about Alex Ovechkin doing Alex Ovechkin things as he scores the overtime GWG, Alex Ovechkin's first career playoff overtime winner. Now, you take a look at it. There have been a lot of accomplishments in the Grade 8's career. You take a look at what he accomplished this year. Catching and passing Wayne Gretzky and all the milestones between here and there. But for him to be so clutch in this game and another accomplishment, first career playoff overtime winner, it is quite fitting for a guy that is on the back 9 of his hockey career. But, you know, as I say on the show, as Alex Ovechkin goes, so go the Capitals. And that was evident when he scored that overtime GWG. If you weren't fist pumping at home or at the game, you might want to check your pulse, because that is what it's all about. That is what this year's Capitals team is all about. Pushing back, finding a way to win, getting ahead. The opposing team having some pushback, but not laying over and playing dead. Have the pushback to say, we're going to fight, we're going to win. And in this one, it was done by none other than my captain, your captain, Alex Ovechkin, being Mr. Clutch like he has been for so many years on this team. And you take a look at what is different about this year's Capitals team versus last year's team. Of course, the roster is that much better. And I think ultimately why Alex Ovechkin knew that last year's team wasn't built for a deep push. There was a lot of talk about him being disinterested and that he didn't seem like he was fully checked in. I think that he realizes that this season, being that he has this season and next season, and then off to the great unknown, that it's a good opportunity to make hay while the sun shines and win another Stanley Cup and do it this year. Because there's a lot of questions about next year that he realizes, I think in a lot of ways, that if there's going to be a team that's going to give him the best chance at winning another cup before he retires, it is this year's team. And he is locked. He is loaded. He was a bull in the china shop. And make no mistake about it, he was one of the biggest pieces, if not the biggest piece out there, that put the Capitals in victory lane. And at 39 years old, he was that bull in the china shop. Of course, he was scoring goals out there, 2 goals on the night, but he was engaged physically. And if there is going to be a secret sauce for the Capitals in this first round, it is a physical game. And you saw that, but you need to keep it in check. I'll talk about that in the last segment, but an engaged Alex Ovechkin in goal scoring and physically is what it is all about. And he made a promise that he was going to step out this season, or in the postseason rather, and he was going to be a man on a mission, and that is what he did. Like I said, after last year's disappointing playoff exit, Ovechkin was determined to show he and the team were ready for a serious run this year. And you saw it out there when the Canadiens, they tied it up. And he was out on the ice. He had a look of determination, like, yep, it's not looking real good for us, boys, but just stick with me, and I'll make sure we win this game. And that is exactly what he did. And boy, did he deliver. He scored 2 incredible goals, including the GWG in overtime, leading the Capitals to a 3-2 victory and taking that important 1-0 lead in this series. And I'm here to tell you that it is all about momentum. And if you don't believe it, take a look at the Canadiens tonight. They scored a goal, and all of a sudden, they were back in it. So the same thing goes for that in this game. The Capitals found a way to win game 1, due in large part of Alex Ovechkin, of course, and that is the momentum that can help them win in game number 2. And then, if you can take games number 1 and 2, that one, it goes out to the Bell Center, that you are going to have that confidence, that swagger, knowing that you have a 2-0 lead in the series. I think it is important for the Capitals to keep rolling. And as long as Alex Ovechkin is out there, I am quite confident. But he was the guy that got the ball rolling tonight. His first goal came late in the first period during the power play, receiving a great pass from Dylan Strome. Who else? And unleashing a wicked wrist shot past Sam Montembeault. One of those moments that is what sets the positivity in motion in this game. And that is what it's all about. And Alex Ovechkin leading the charge, getting the Capitals on the board first, was so important. You take a look at the many accomplishments that he has done in his career, that he is oftentimes the guy to be clutch in the regular season, the postseason. He continues in that direction. But that first goal, that wasn't it for Ovi. He also assisted on Anthony Beauvillier's goal. And, you take a look at Anthony Beauvillier. How's that working out for the Capitals? That trade that took place on the most recent trade deadline here, not so long ago, was seen as a depth move. Was he going to be a healthy scratch? Where was he going to slot in? I'll tell you where he slotted in. He was playing on the first line with Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, and himself. That is something. And, to a certain extent, we shouldn't be too shocked, because he had quite a bit of responsibility playing with the Penguins as well, playing with Sidney Crosby. So, it's interesting, the masterclass, if you will, by Chris Patrick making that trade that on paper seems like, hey, what's the deal there? That guy seems like a bit of a journeyman. He's bouncing around from this team and that team, has been huge. And Alex Ovechkin working with him was extra sweet in this game. Then he sealed the deal in OT with a well-placed shot off a feed from who else? Beauvillier, getting the GWG. Let's hear it, Capitals fans. Game 1, Alex Ovechkin. This is the makings of a movie. This year's Capitals team, for no other reason. Alex Ovechkin catching and passing Gretzky for one, but the Cinderella story, the icing on top, is if the Capitals can, in fact, win the Stanley Cup this season. I'm not afraid of believing. I definitely think that it could be the case, that there is a lot to be excited about with this year's team. Like I said last year, a lot of questions, backing into victory, getting into the playoffs in the last game of the season. I think Ovechkin realized, he did, didn't he, that this team wasn't doing that great. It was, with a roster that is not as well built, shall we say, that it is this year. So Alex Ovechkin, let's hear it for the Great Eight, doing so many great things throughout his entire career. But given the Capitals the 1-0 lead in this series, that is what it is all about. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the players that stepped up, that put the Capitals in victory lane. I'll discuss straight ahead. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Now, personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to snack. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are, well, a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in the first segment, I talked about Alex Ovechkin, of course, the GWG, so important, but what other players got it done for the Capitals tonight? Who was in the mix? Logan Thompson, a guy that has been out since April 2nd. A lot of question marks. Spencer Carberry didn't want to say who was going to be in net. You're just going to have to wait till he's in the tunnel. Oh, well, the hand was tipped as he was the first skater off the ice. I think that if Carberry really wanted to mess with the Canadiens, he should have had Charlie Lindgren the first off. But that's rather here nor there. Logan Thompson was in net, and he played okay. You know, some people might say, okay, are you kidding me? He played. Listen, there were some times in this game that he was out of position, but all things considered, I liked what I saw in his game, and he was huge. I think he gave the Capitals the best chance at winning. You know, take a look at Charlie Lindgren. He has been a little bit more up in the air as well. So Logan Thompson in the mix was huge for the Capitals and one of the key ingredients in the Capitals' success. But also Dylan Strome, he was crucial in this game as well with 2 assists. And that is what it is all about, chipping in. And as we know, Dylan Strome is that guy that has been huge all season long. He had 3 assists. It was a 3-point night for Dylan Strome. So quite an outing for him, a guy that has tremendous shoes to fill as the replacement for Nick Backstrom. And I know it's been a bit here, but there were so many questions out there for the longest time. Who's going to be the guy? Dylan Strome has been that, and then some for the Capitals all season long. And, you know, you take a look at it. The other key ingredients was Ovechkin. It was the physicality in this game if you take a look at Wilson, that bull in the China shop, just laying out a big hit early in. And then you saw Duhaime and Ovechkin, that part of the key ingredients in this series is going to be physicality because the Capitals have bigger frames. They have more tough guys that I think that gives them a distinct advantage. The team racked up a total of 20 hits in the first period with Ovi leading the charge. And, not something that we see so much in Alex Ovechkin in his golden years, shall we say, in the NHL. But I think that he understands what is at stake. And leading by example, I think, is what paid off well for the Capitals. The only thing I guess I would say, and I'll talk about what they need to work on in the last segment, is they need to see that maintained physical presence throughout the game. All things considered, they ended up out-hitting the Canadiens 30-25, showcasing that playoff intensity that we love to see from our team. You got to lean into your strengths, right? And ultimately, that is what the Capitals need to do, and quite an impressive outing from our team. But, you take a look at it, the Capitals have some great goal scorers on paper, big marquee names, that kind of thing. But you have to kind of dig into your strengths, and physicality is definitely one of the things that the Capitals have as their strong suit. Like I said, off the top, Logan Thompson got the nod to be in the net tonight. And all things considered, I think that he played a pretty good game. If you take a look at some of the advanced metrics, I think that maybe not, a game that he is in love with. I think there's probably some things that he would like to have back. But on the night, saving 33 of 35, at least answering that question about who is going to be in net for the Capitals. Because despite what we saw from Logan in net tonight, I know he got the win. Is that we know that we're going to have the netminder that gave the Capitals the best chance at winning. And what do I mean when I say that? Well, the Capitals are in the position that they're in right now, due in large part because of Logan Thompson. I know that we saw that dip in the latter part before he got injured, shall we say, a handful of games before he got injured. So we're looking for a bounce back. I don't think that he's totally out of the woods and 100%. And I think, maybe I need to be a little bit more easier on him as it was his first game back. But all things considered, he made some of the saves that he needed to make and probably, could have been in better positioning, those kind of things. So he could have even made it a better opportunity for the Capitals to win. But you take a look at it, the Capitals defense stepped up a big time too, playing smart and effectively, especially with Martin Fehervary out of the lineup. And those are no easy shoes to fill. So who stepped in? Alex Ovechkin, a guy that has little playing time this year. Not a whole lot of games for the Capitals. He had that conditioning stint in Hershey. And, there were bits and pieces that I liked out of Alex Ovechkin. But he was one of the guys that stood up. That's what I'm going to say is he stood up in big shoes to fill. And, with not a lot of miles on his hockey odometer, was doing a good job, physical and doing a great job keeping the puck out of dangerous areas. So all things considered, I think he did an okay job. But with that said, as well as he took that stick up high, and what is being said is that he is going to need a significant amount of dental work. So I'm not a dentist or, something of that nature. If it is significant dental work, is he going to be in the mix in game number 2? I guess we don't know. But maybe Martin Fehervary will be in the mix. So maybe some of those questions will answer themselves. In the event that Alexeyev and Martin Fehervary are not able to go, we have Dylan McIlrath and we have Ethan Bear on the blue line in the cupboard if needed. But what is one of the things that we know for sure that we witnessed tonight is the Canadiens are a fast team. And Dylan McIlrath, by his own admission, is not one of the quickest skaters out on the ice. So I think that is ultimately why they went with Alexeyev. And, if Alexeyev and Fehervary aren't good to go, they have McIlrath, they have Ethan Bear, or they can always call someone up from Hershey as well. But those are the players that stepped up. I'm thinking that's why I say Alex Ovechkin, not a lot of playing time, did a good job. Logan Thompson, who has been out since April 2nd, got the Capitals the win. That broad brush, 30,000-foot view, those players stepped up, and a good win for this team. There's some things that I don't like, and I'll talk about in the final segment, but all things considered, the Capitals found a way to maintain, and the key players, some of which have missed a substantial amount of time, really stood in and played a huge role for this team. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about what needs to get worked on so the Capitals can win game number 2. Listen, I know that we're happy that the Capitals won game 1, but it shouldn't have made it to overtime in the first place. What needs to get worked on so the Capitals can win more easily, shall we say? It was a rough night for the Capitals in certain metrics. I'll discuss straight ahead. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after getting the game tips off, you can even combine your live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this final segment, we'll talk about what needs to get worked on so the Capitals can win game number 2. I know they did win the game tonight in overtime, but there are certain things that need to get cleaned up. The biggest thing, like I talked about all season long, is playing that complete 60-minute game. Started really strong in the first period. It was all Capitals. But then we saw the wheel wobble a little bit in the second, and they struggled quite a bit in the third period, as was evident as the Canadiens tied up the game. So the biggest thing in the first period is I think the Capitals laid out the body big time. Wilson, Ovechkin, Duhaime, these kind of guys, that is what put the pressure on them. And I think that the Canadiens were trying to find their footing. I think that they were overthinking things. I think that the physical onslaught by the Capitals was a bit much for them to bear. And ultimately, one of the things that I think that the Capitals really had in their skill set was that physical presence. But where the Capitals did struggle in the latter part of the game, things that worked well for them in the first and second periods that didn't work in the third was passing. There was not some great passing, some tape-to-tape passing. A lot of the passes were broke up. And that is because the Canadiens were dialed in. They were all in on winning. And to be clear here, that Canadiens team does have a pretty good defense, if you didn't notice tonight. So that is definitely one of the things that I think that the Capitals will have to clean up is just playing that full 60-minute game. That physicality that gave you the advantage in the first period, you're going to have to find a way to keep that rolling through the entire game if you want to have sustained success. So those are the big things to look at. And the other things are some of the things that we can't control. I think the Capitals would play that much better with Martin Fehervary in there, of course. I think the Capitals would play that much better with Alex Ovechkin in there. That if you take a look at it, they are looking for players to step in for a 30-goal scorer like Alex Ovechkin. Those guys don't grow on trees. And, you take a look at it. I think that Anthony Beauvillier is a good option for the Capitals on that first line. However, Protas has played well either on the first or second line. So it'll be interesting to see how that lineup all shakes out for the team. As far as Ryan Leonard is concerned, we are going to need to see more from him. We saw a little bit of snarls. We saw a little bit of getting into fisticuffs there. But when I take a look at the box score for Ryan Leonard, he is at all zeros. We don't need a player that's at all zeros out on the ice for this team. I understand that he's out there because, well, who else are you going to put in at this point? I guess you could put in Ethan Frank or someone of that nature. But all things considered, we need to see more from Ryan Leonard. The same metrics, the same standards that we hold for a player during the regular season don't hold true in the postseason. It's not about, he's getting better game by game, and he's just going out there and having fun. Listen, you got to push all that aside in the postseason, in the playoffs. It's about winning all of the games that you possibly can. So you don't want a player out there that's okay. You need a player that's really going to step up big time. Ryan Leonard, he was skating, he was moving his legs, a little bit of physicality, but definitely something that needs to get worked on. Again, I talked about Alexeyev as a strength in the second segment. I'm also here to tell you that he was a bit of a liability as well. The constant fighting behind the net after the play ended was a liability. And I understand that Alex Alexeyev has not had a tremendous amount of playing time this year on the big team. And I think that maybe he was trying to make his mark as like, hey, I'm going to be a tough guy. I'm going to make an impression with the head coach by bringing a physical game. That, if you're finishing your checks, forechecking, back checking, those kind of things, dropping the mitts if called upon, but just not the cross-checking, pushing behind the net that is inevitably going to lead to a power play for the opposing team and the Capitals being on the PK. Listen, one of the things the Capitals struggled in the third period in particular was discipline. What set the wheels in motion for the Canadiens in the first place was the penalty by Pierre-Luc Dubois. They made the most of that opportunity, and that led to another goal. And what do you know? It went from the Capitals up from 2-0 to a tie game. So discipline is one of the things the Capitals are going to have to dig deep if they're going to want to be successful in the postseason here. All things considered, I think they played rather well, but those are the things that I think they need to clean up. They need to work on discipline. These players that, are kind of just on the fringe of being in the lineup, Ryan Leonard, we're going to need to see a whole lot more from him when Protas is back, where I think that Ryan Leonard is going to be a healthy scratch. And, just to need to see a bit more from Logan Thompson. Again, I don't want to be too hard on him as it was his first game back. He got the win, but, in particular, I say it was the second goal. He was greatly out of position and at points just seemed to me like he was a little bit lost. We don't need a netminder that's lost. Again, you take a look at it. He made a bunch of saves. I'm just saying there were bits and pieces throughout the game that he didn't seem like he was dialed in 100%. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL as they have you covered 5 days a week. Available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.